part of the United States. Even though all this is horrific, isn't it nice to see that? So there's something there. I want to talk to you today about politics, but not in the usual sense. When we talk about politics, we usually mean Republicans against Democrats, liberals against conservatives, that sort of thing. And fair enough, that's politics. But there's a deeper meaning to politics that we often ignore. Politics is the relationship between the individual and the state. And it's this relationship that we human beings have been struggling to get right for as long as we've walked the earth. And we've tried everything. We've tried kingdoms, we've tried empires, we've tried right-wing dictatorships, left-wing dictatorships, we've tried direct democracies, parliamentary democracies, representative democracies. Think of each of these efforts as an operating system, just like your cell phone has an operating system. Every time a government passes a new law or a new regulation or a new edict, it's an effort to make the operating system work better. Sometimes you like the change, sometimes you don't. And by the way, it's the same with your cell phones. They're always sending out upgrades and things. And sometimes you like it, and sometimes you wish you could go back to the old way of doing it. Well, you know, if you don't like your iPhone, you can trade it in and get a whole different operating system on an Android phone. If you don't like your Android, you can get a new iPhone. Can a government change its operating system? Can a country do it? Yes. And do you know what the precise technical word is for a country that changes its operating system? Revolution. That's what a revolution is, when a country changes its operating system. If we go from a Democratic president to a Republican president, same operating system, you make changes, it's the same system. In Britain, when they go from Labour Party to Conservative Party, there are changes, but it's the same operating system. But when the Cold War ended and the communist government of Poland fell and Lech Walesa became the president of Poland, well, that was a revolution. Okay? And this gets us to the United States. When our country was founded, the founding fathers created an operating system the likes of which the world had never seen before. We, the people, were in charge, and they worked for us. Imagine that. Ordinary people, shopkeepers, farmers, business people, doctors, nurses, we ran it, and the government worked for us. This sounds like a politician's 4th of July speech when you say it like that. But you have to realize, the end of the 18th century, nobody ever thought you could build an operating system like that. No one ever thought something like that could work. Well, we made it work. And that's the miracle of the United States. We built what is, in many ways, the greatest country in the world. We had our problems. We had slavery. We had the Civil War to end it. You can think of post-Civil War as version 2.0. We've made changes along the way. You can think of FDR's New Deal as version 3. Lyndon Johnson's Great Society is 3.5. But no one ever wanted to change this incredible operating system. Look what it did until now. Along came a group of people. And it's not fair to call them Democrats. They include some Democrats, but it's not all Democrats, not all liberals. For just the sake of conversation, we'll call them progressives. They came along and they wanted to change the operating system. Okay, instead of having us in charge, they were going to be in charge because they knew better than we did. They were going to run everything, including what toilet flush mechanisms we had, what light bulbs we put in, what wells we could drill, and on, what we could watch on television, how we could educate our children, what's a human being, what's marriage. There's nothing they weren't going to take control of. And what we need to understand is that wasn't just left against right, Democrat against Republican, liberal against conservative. They were changing the operating system. They were going to run it. We were going to do what they told us. And we were going to be like peasants at the end of the Roman Empire. Shut up, we have no interest in your opinion. Your only function in life is to send revenue. That's pretty much where they were going with it. And they were making progress. Slowly, slowly, it kept going in their direction. They didn't want to do it with guns. It was sort of the idea that, you throw the lobster in a pot of cold water, turn the light on, and it just heats up, and it's too late for the lobster to crawl out. The whole point of the Obama administration was to push this so far, you could never get it back. There's a difference between untangling a knot and unscrambling an egg. You can do one, but you cannot do the other. The whole point of the Obama administration was to scramble the egg. And they knew exactly what they were doing. That's why the Affordable Health Care Act was 1,700 pages of absolute gobbledygook. Okay? You couldn't go back to where it was. The Republicans have been talking about repeal and replace. Guys, you cannot unscramble an egg. You can repair, you can make it better. You can't get back to where it was. That was the whole point of why they did it like that in the first place, okay? Look at the deal with Iran. And it really is the worst deal in our lifetimes, possibly in recorded history. The moment Obama signed the deal, they sent a plane over with $150 billion in cash. You can't get it back. Obama can cancel the deal, he can modify it, he can disqualify, do whatever he wants. You're not getting back the $150 billion, which they're using to build nuclear bombs and destabilize the world. So everything was designed to push things so far, we could never get it back. Because they knew that the next president was Hillary Clinton. And after 4 years or 8 years of Hillary, it was over. That lobster was dead. They were on cruise control to victory. And then along came Donald Trump. Now, even among Republicans like us, there are a lot of different views about Donald Trump. Some people think he's the best president since Reagan. Other people think he's an insufferable jerk. By the way, there is a new perception taking hold around the country, which is interesting. He's the best president since Reagan, and he's an insufferable jerk. Turns out you can be both. We'll see. Anyway, whatever you think of Donald Trump, we can be here all day arguing about that. He stopped the revolution dead in its tracks. That's what he did. That's what happened last year. Okay? He didn't just win the election. He stopped a revolution dead in its tracks. And that's what the Democrats never thought was possible. Remember, they were on cruise control to victory. They had it. And they just can't believe the fact that it went away. They lost. And that's why they've reacted the way they have. It isn't just a normal election. They had it won. They'd worked for 30 years to complete the revolution. They were this close. And then suddenly it disappeared when they lost their grip on it. And what that means is this. What's happening in our country today isn't politics. This is civil war. That's what's going on, and until you see it through that lens, you can't understand what's happening. In the Reagan years, Reagan and the Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, despised each other. Okay? But they both loved the United States. So they'd argue, well, should the tax rate be 22% or 38%? But in the end, they weren't going to let the country go down the drain. It's like two physicians arguing about how to treat a patient. You don't keep arguing while the patient dies. You stop arguing and you do something. Okay? Well, at the end of the day, they figured out what the tax rate should be, and then they went and had a bourbon. Because they love this country. You don't have that anymore. You've got a political party that hates us, that hates everything we stand for. And that's a civil war. And that's where we are right now. It couldn't come at a worse time in history. Boy, have we got problems out there. First, we have what the CIA we used to call nuts with nukes, and that's North Korea and Iran. You know, we used to monitor countries with nuclear programs. We had to know when they had a nuclear bomb. We had to know when they could deliver it. We used spies. We used satellites. Whatever it took to find out where the country was with the nuclear bomb program, we did. Whatever money it took. We bring all the intelligence in, put it in a bomb-proof room, bring in a team of nuclear experts and say, study this intelligence. When will they have a nuclear bomb? And the experts would study it, days, weeks, whatever, and they'd say, well, we'd say 2 to 3 years. Yeah. Bring in another team of nuclear experts. It's always good to second opinion on these things. Second team of experts would look at the same intelligence, and they'd say, well, we'd say 4 to 5 years, could be 6. No, that's a lot better. You walk these guys to the elevator, you take them out to lunch, you get back to the office, and the country had a nuclear test while you were having lunch. You go, wait a minute, how did that happen? We never got it right. Never once. Sometimes a country with a nuclear program ran into some technical problem and it screwed them up for 3 or 4 years. And then another country was on the way to having a nuclear bomb, and they had some 23-year-old brilliant physicist who came up with a new breakthrough nobody had ever thought of before, and they got there 3 years before anybody thought they could. You never get it right. All you can do is estimate these things. We invented the nuclear bomb. That was the Manhattan Project in World War II. The total elapsed time from launching the Manhattan Project to Hiroshima was 5 years. That's it. That was the 1940s. You don't have to reinvent the nuclear bomb. You download the plans. We could go out and buy the parts for a nuclear bomb on the black market. We had the time and the money, we could do it. The tricky part is the fuel, turning uranium ore into U-235, plutonium-239. That's the process you see on television with centrifuges spinning and things like that. It's very complicated technically. It's very expensive, but you know, a dozen countries have done it already, including, by the way, South Africa, before we disarmed them. Well, if the South Africans can do it, so can the North Koreans, and so can the Iranians. They're all working together, and they're all getting help from China and Russia. When you talk to any serious nuclear expert, what they will tell you about Iran and North Korea is they're there. And what that means is either they already have a nuclear bomb and the ability to hit Seattle with it, or they'll have it next Tuesday, 3 weeks from now, 8 months from now. You cannot be more precise than that. It's like a physician saying, I'm sorry, but your father will die 3 weeks from Wednesday at 8 o'clock. You can't be precise like that. You say a few days, a few weeks, a few months, a couple of years. So they're there. And what it means is this. We're now at that point with Iran and North Korea. When they start fueling up a rocket, we have no way to know whether that's a test going over the Sea of Japan or whether that one's coming to downtown Seattle. There's just no way to know until it's in the air. And by that time, it's too late. Because the missile defense system that President Reagan proposed and everybody laughed at, we didn't build it. And we should have. So this is very serious. The president's got his hands full with this. We have no idea whether the next bird they launch is coming here or going 300 miles and going to self-destruct. That's how serious that is. At the same time, in addition to that, and ISIS and all the terrorists, what the terrorists are up to is this. There's now a competition within the terrorist world, among ISIS, Al-Qaeda, there's something called the Khorasan Group. The whole point of the competition is who's the leader of the terrorists. And the way they're competing is this. Whoever sets off more terrorist attacks is the better terrorist. So the word is out now to every terrorist in the world, do what you can, but do it now. So if you can blow up a big mall and kill a bunch of people, well, great. If all you can do is hit a Starbucks or a 7-Eleven, do it. If the best thing you can do is drive a truck into a crowd of people, do it. Or shoot up a restaurant. So that's why we're seeing all of these terrorist attacks. Whether the slaughter in Las Vegas was terrorism or not, we just don't know yet. We just simply don't know. We'll find out. Could have been just a lunatic, it could have been more than that. But one way or the other, the reason we're seeing all these attacks all over, because the word is out, do what you can, but do it now. If the best thing you can do is kill 4 people, do it. So we've got that going on. Look, these are all very serious things, but I'll tell you, that isn't the one that worries me the most. You know, some of us are old enough. Remember when the Berlin Wall went up? Yeah, that was going to be World War III. It wasn't. And then remember the Cuban Missile Crisis after that? That wasn't World War III either. We got through it. And years later, there was the Iranians taking our hostages, and then the shoot down of KAL-7, 9/11 itself. We're always going from one ghastly thing to another. We always get through it. Not brilliantly, not perfectly, people get hurt, but we get through it. These aren't the ones that worry me. The Trump people are very capable people. He's got one of the most capable national security cabinets and staffs we've had in a long, long time. These people are good. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them about everything, but they're good. They're professionals, they're solid. And by the way, any chief executive who brings in people that good is a pretty good chief executive. So he's done some pretty good things there. I've never met Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, but I'm sort of a fan. I don't think you can get to be chairman of Exxon by being an idiot. You know, letting yourself get pushed around. Instinct tells me that he's probably a tougher guy than most people think. We'll find out. I don't know. Here's what worries me the most. It's that the United States steps aside, that we turn our back on the world by losing this civil war. You know, our country has changed a great deal since you and I were growing up. Today, for the first time in our history, more than 50% of adult Americans are not married. That's an enormous change in our culture. Today in this country, more than 40% of all births are to unwed mothers. You know, when I grew up, it was 5%. Now it's 40. By the way, it varies ethnically. Among white women, 30%. Hispanics, 52%. Blacks, 68%. But put it all together, it's 40%. Well, add that to the divorce rate. What it means is that more than 40% of all children in our country are now growing up in one-parent households, which means without fathers. And that's an enormous difference in a culture, okay? Today in our country, 1 out of 6 working age men, this is men in prime working years, it's age 24 to 56, 1 out of 6 doesn't work. They're not unemployed, they're not even counted as unemployed, they don't work. They live off wives, girlfriends, things like that. This has never happened in our country. That isn't just an economic disaster, that's a human disaster. Okay? So if you just look at the numbers, we're not the same country that you and I grew up in. If the numbers don't stop you dead in your tracks, for God's sakes, look at us. I mean, we've never been an elegant people, not the French or not the Italians, but you know, when we were growing up, when you went out, when you went to school, when you went to work, when you went shopping, when you went to church, when you went to synagogue, you made an effort to look nice. Boy, almost no one does that anymore. I mean, I don't look terrific walking in or out of a McDonald's, but gee, a bunch of slobs. 1 out of 3 is obese. The drug use is out of sight. If you're standing in line going through security at the airport, look what people look like. Just listen to the music blasting through their headphones. It isn't Mozart. It's not Rodgers and Hammerstein. It isn't even Elvis Presley. It's violent and it's awful. And we need to recognize how much our country has changed. And when you change that much, you become a different culture. And we begin to think differently. I don't mean you think differently, but collectively, all of us combined think differently. you go from what I call hard thinking to soft thinking. In hard thinking, there's such a thing as reality. There's such a thing as a man. There's such a thing as a woman. You don't get to choose. Marriage is a man and a woman. You know, this is a podium. That's a chair. You don't get to call it what you want. It is what it is. In soft thinking, it's whatever you want it to be. In hard thinking, you have a problem, you try and find a solution. Soft thinking, you have a problem, you find a scapegoat. Well, you put this in place and let it roll out over the years, and now you can see how we are electing people who would have been unelectable 10, 20, 30 years ago. And again, I don't mean disagree with me on this tax rate or something like that. They have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And they're doing things that make absolutely no sense. They talk about creating jobs, but they want to destroy entrepreneurs. That's like saying, I want more milk, let's shoot the cows. I mean, guess what? It isn't going to work. And this put it all together, and we're in a civil war. And that's what's happened. Let me tell you something. The entire world, it's holding its breath right now to see how this civil war turns out. Because everything depends on the United States. Whether you like it or not, we're the United States. We keep the world going straight down the track. Do we make mistakes? Of course we do. Everybody makes mistakes. But you know, there's a problem, there's a hurricane, there's a disaster. Everyone's moaning and groaning about these Americans, a bunch of sweaty, hairy-chested, Bible-thumping morons, and then they want the 82nd Airborne to show up. And we send the 82nd Airborne, we rescue everybody, and then they start moaning and groaning about these stupid Americans again. Well, what if we don't show up? Then what do? You turn to that nice Mr. Putin in Moscow? Those really nice guys in Beijing? You kidding? The whole world is just holding its breath to see how this civil war is going to end. If the other guys win and the United States ceases to be the number one country, it's over. And by the way, there has never been a more extraordinary time in the world. Let me tell you something that you don't see on the news at night. When you stand back from all the headlines, all the yelling and the screaming and the posturing and everything else, today, around the world, humanity is emerging from poverty at a rate never seen before in history. Each year, between 50 million and 100 million human beings now cross the line out of poverty. By 1980, 1990, about 2 billion human beings were in poverty. Now another 500 million have emerged from poverty, and the rate at which they emerge is accelerating. What it means is this. If this trend continues, if we don't screw this up, it means that within the lifetimes of some of us here today, but certainly within our children's lifetimes, for the first time in history, the overwhelming majority of human beings will not be poor. Isn't that stunning? And you won't see that reported on the news. The improvement in global health is unprecedented. From 1990 to 2013, there's been a 47% drop in deaths related to malaria. Mostly children, millions and millions of people every year. Been a 38% drop in AIDS-related deaths, a 33% drop in deaths related to tuberculosis. From 1990 to 2013, the number of people who die each year from diarrhea-related illnesses, mostly children, has dropped from over 5 million to 760,000. A couple of guys got together and they put all the numbers together and they tried to figure out what it means. What they calculated is this. On an average day today, at the end of the day, when we're home, walk the dog one more time, check your email, lock the door, at the end of the day tonight, around the world, 17,000 children will not have died, who would have died on every average day in 1990. Isn't that stunning? And boy, you won't see that reported on the news. Well, the result of all of this is what is now the biggest underreported news story in the world. The emergence and rapid growth of a global middle class. And you see this all the time. Did you know that Netflix is now in 190 countries? You know, if you're watching a movie on Netflix, you're not in a tent, okay? You got power, you're holding an iPad, or you're looking at a computer or a television. Yum Brands, which owns Kentucky Fried Chicken and Pizza Hut, says the busiest franchises in the world are now in Africa. That's stunning. That's fantastic. It means people in Lagos are phoning in an order for chicken and pizza, sending someone down to pick it up, putting it on a kitchen table. A kid runs in from another room, grabs a slice, goes back into his room. That's middle class, okay? And you know why that's good? Because they're on our side. Normal middle-class people get busy with their jobs, with their kids, making plans for the weekend, getting together with friends, going to sporting events, music events. Most human beings would rather shop than fight. And that's good. So what you're seeing now is a world becoming modern. People being just like us in countries most of us can't even find on a map. And they're on our side, and they want the United States to lead the world. You know, there's always this left-right, liberal-conservative fight going on. Our grandparents took out the fascists, we took out the communists. There's a new kind of authoritarianism around. You see it with Vladimir Putin, you see it with Xi of China, you see it with Erdogan in Turkey, which is, hey, you ordinary people, you can't be in control. You need a strong man. You need me, you need the party. We'll take care of it, we'll get everything done. And that's the fight going on in the world. That's the big thing behind the headlines. And what's so interesting, when you look at these progressives in Seattle and Washington, they're saying the same thing, which is, let me take control of it, you're not bright enough to do it. And that's why this civil war in our country has global implications. Everything depends on who wins it. Well, where are we, okay? When you get interested in civil wars, you start studying about civil wars. When you look at our Civil War in 1860, 1865, Abraham Lincoln understood something his generals never understood. There were more Northerners than Southerners. So if we kept fighting one battle after another, even if we in the North took heavy casualties, in the end, we'd win the war because the South would run out of soldiers before the North ran out of soldiers. And that was the arithmetic of the Civil War. Lincoln got it, his generals didn't get it until he got Grant. And says, keep fighting, don't give up, because in the end, there are more of us than there are of them. And that's what happened when we won the Civil War. What I've come here this afternoon to tell you is this. We're in another civil war. Ladies and gentlemen, my neighbors, fellow Republicans, conservatives, there are more of us than there are of them. That's what President Trump proved. That's what we're seeing play out in the country. By the way, that doesn't mean there are more of us in Skagit County, okay? Or in the Pacific Northwest. You know, I mean, one of you guys was talking about Seattle and all that. The communists are never going to hit Seattle. They're further left, okay? I mean, in Seattle, they think Lenin was too conservative. I mean, they're crazy. But when you look at the country, it's true, I'm not kidding. But when you look at the whole country, when you look at the United States, it's obvious there are more of us than there are of them. That's why the Democrats and the progressives are going nuts, because that's what this election proved. Look, we can argue all day about Trump, and it seems to me obvious that he didn't win so much as Hillary lost. So that everybody said, you know something, I'll do anything to stop her from getting to the White House. If they'd have nominated anyone else, I think that candidate would have won. But they didn't. Good, we won. There are more of us than there are of them. What it means is this: you keep fighting. You don't give up. Even if we lose this battle, this one over the health care, over the tax rate, over the immigration, it doesn't matter. Keep going. Because in the long run, there are more of us than there are of them. And that's what President Trump proved. That may be his great contribution to history, and boy, it's something. Now again, when you're out here in the Pacific Northwest, it's easy to forget this. We're the majority. Okay? Don't let these Democrats scare you off. The whole point is to make you think you can't win this. Even if you have a majority in the House and the Senate, you can't win. Okay, look, let's agree the Republican establishment in Washington is not exactly terrific, okay? If we put them in charge of lunch, it would have been here by 4 o'clock. No, actually, it wouldn't have been. At 4 o'clock, they'd have announced that they formed a commission to investigate why lunch couldn't be done. So they're not terrific. So yeah, things are going to go wrong. But don't lose track of what matters most. There are more of us than there are of them. And that's what the world needs to see. When you stand back from all the yelling and the screaming and the politics and everything, the world is emerging from poverty at a rate never seen before. We are seeing the emergence and exponential growth of a global middle class. This global middle class will become the most powerful force in history. Powerful politically, powerful socially, and above all, powerful economically. Its demand for products and services is so huge that there are now more and more serious economists and economic institutions who believe that if we win the Civil War, if the president basically wins, okay? We are not only on the verge of an economic boom, but a sonic boom. And there is a small but rapidly growing number of very serious economists, economic institutions, who believe with a little bit of luck, if we play this right, a lot of ifs in the sentence, okay? We could be on the verge of a supersonic boom. And by the way, if you look at the industries that will dominate the 21st century, that's energy, food, infrastructure, healthcare, education, entertainment, because these are the industries of a middle class. Do you know what one country holds the world's leadership in all 6 of these industries?
The United States.
The United States. Yeah. Why no one in Washington has figured that out, I have no explanation. But do you realize we completely dominate the 6 industries that control the 21st century? Isn't that extraordinary? Everything depends on who wins this Civil War. Look, you know me, I'm an optimist, okay? There's something about Americans, we don't get our act together at the last possible minute. We get it together after the last possible minute. You know, just like when my kids were growing up, they would completely waste the weekend and then at 10 o'clock Sunday night panic and start doing their homework. My son once famously wrote a book report on the school bus Monday morning going in. You know, you do it after the last possible minute when it's obvious you can't pull it off. And he pulled it off, okay? That's what Americans are like. Just when everybody gives up, when you think, uh-oh, it's over, we get it together. So let me tell you something. The last talking head on Fox News says, oh, it's too late, we can't get out of this now. That's when we get out of this. I think we're going to pull it together. And, you know, sometimes when things are bad, it's darkest just before the dawn. We've been through some terrible times. The hurricanes, the slaughter, the wars, and all that. What I see out there now is we're getting this thing together. And I think we're going to pull this thing off. And once again, we will astonish the world. And let me tell you something. I do a lot of traveling and a lot of talking with a lot of people. They're all rooting for us. Not as Democrats or Republicans. They just want the Americans to win this thing. Because if we do that, that's a better world for everything. And for everyone else. And I've never seen anything like this. Everybody just holding their breath, saying, come on, guys, just get this thing together and go. And what you're seeing now is that's what's happening. So you watch the news every night, and it's always bad. They never tell you anything good. They always find a black cloud in every silver lining. The day our scientists find a cure for cancer, there'll be 3 talking heads on Fox News explaining to us why, although you would think this is a good thing, you know, it's not. We're going to live longer, and that's going to put pressure on Social Security. Oh, come on, guys. So they're never going to give you a break, and never going to let you know that something's getting better. But you know something? When you stand back from all the yelling and the screaming, and you look at what's really happening out there, a world emerging from poverty, a global middle class, and the United States dominating the 6 industries that control the 21st century. If we win this Civil War, what a world we're going to leave our kids. It's going to be a richer world, it's going to be a safer world, and a much, much better world. So don't be discouraged, don't let these people get you down. I think we're at a great turning point now of starting to win this thing. And boy, what a time to be alive. What a time to be out here in the Pacific Northwest. And what a time to be engaged in politics at every level. So lucky you. And thank you for listening to me. Yeah, you got time for questions? Yeah, by the way,